Good morning, good evening, good whatever the fuck. Hello. How you guys doing? Done getting all the ducks in a row before going live. Yeah, I do need to get all my ducks in a row. I'm so fucked. I'm so tired. But yeah. Bitcoin strong? Yeah, it is. It is indeed. Everything has been strong, with one exception, that's been ETH. Everything else just seems like it just wants to keep going up. Yo, Don, hope you and the fam are good. Yeah, there's just a lot of things to do going into the new year. But we make the stream happen. We make it happen. But yeah, as last week, the little baby is terrorizing me in my sleep. But not only that, also I had to battle accountants and banks and offices and paper. Dude, it's one duck is not enough for all of this work, especially not going into Christmas. Hey Doug, why do you sound upset that everything is going up? I'm not. If anything, I sound upset because I'm because I'm tired. I'm not too upset. I'm actually not upset at all because, yeah, there's a few things that I still get from the market going up, which is quite nice. A few investments, but nothing big. But yeah, if anything, if I sound upset, it's because I didn't get any sleep, or like a little bit, but not much. Don't sleep in the same room as the kid and wife. Nah, dude, we ain't like that. But yeah, before we start the show, big shout out to Woo for sponsoring it. Really appreciate their support. They have cool stuff going on almost always. Right now there's a trading competition on there where you can, win up to 1 million. Well, like the prize pool is up to 1 million. Right now it's much less than that. But the more people trade, the more people can, like the higher the prize pool goes, whatever. So if you want to check that out, go to the link in the description. They do cool stuff like this all the time. So I can recommend it. VeChain, no way are people talking about this again. Oh, it's because it's up. Dude, I did TA on this 150 years ago. That's one that me as a boomer knows. That must be the most bearish thing that I could utter. If I know it, you're fucked. If I know the coin that you're trading, you're gonna stay poor. It's just how it is. I'm sorry. And I know this one. So Inch, I don't know anything about. So why aren't you looking at log charts? It doesn't make a difference. Does not make a difference. Anyway, oh Jesus, people are bombarding me with tickers already. I wanna die. We'll talk about Bitcoin. That's a little bit less boring than ETH, but we'll still talk about ETH, and then we can talk about Solana. But there's not that much to say, really, on these altcoins. Like, people are like, "Oh, please talk about Solana." This shit has been up only. There's, like I said, like, if you want to have a target, like target 100. Ever since we basically broke out of whatever $30-40, that still is the same kind of like that's where I could see resistance, like 80 to 100. That's that for Sol. And then pullback levels, there's none. You either buy it at 30. I wouldn't want to buy it at 60 on a pullback, like on a high time frame pullback. So like, what's there to talk about other than like the 4-hour chart, which you could trade, but I don't really do. There's not that much to say. But we can go over Sol as well properly. It's not the time for high time frame stuff. It's the time for low time frame stuff. And Therefore, it is not my time. It is your time. But yeah, we'll talk about all of this. But we start with Bitcoin, and then we can go down the shitter list. The further we go, the shittier it's gonna get. But better, the shittier it gets, the better price action right now, which in my opinion is not what you want to see. I think that's like, generally speaking, just to kind of go away from the charts real quick. If you remember when I was buying 16K, and especially when I was buying 25K, I made the argument that I'm bullish crypto/Bitcoin as long as it's a Bitcoin narrative driven rally, right? That means that altcoins aren't going too crazy, especially ETH. I didn't want to see ETH go up. Now that's still the case. So there might still be some room for upside. But in general, I wanted it to be a Bitcoin narrative-led rally. And that was the case until basically 40K. We had an outlier with Solana, but that was basically it. Ever since 38 to like 44K, that has changed. We like this, the focus is not on Bitcoin anymore. It's very clearly elsewhere. So take that with a grain of salt, because I'm not trading anything right now. I don't think I would even have the time if I wanted to, but I also don't want to. It's been quite nice not doing anything. But yeah, that's kind of like where I'm coming from. The whole Bitcoin narrative has been watered down, and we're also running into the ETF now. So you have to be prepared for a spike to the upside on positive ETF news, but you also have to be prepared for selling into the news, in my opinion. So that's the Bitcoin thing. That's more important than the charts, but we can still talk about charts. And those are not that bad, to be honest. Like, looking at the monthly time frame, it's still above 35K. As long as it's above 35K, it's just a good looking chart. If this monthly closes red, that's the only way that I could see this flip into like a neutral chart, and that's quite something, right? You wouldn't expect this to close red. Right, and then it would only be neutral. The only way for this to be bearish is to close significantly below 35K at this point, right? So charts are still quite good, but obviously you could retest on the monthly time frame, right? Next year in January, you could retest 35K and still be hilariously bullish. And I think a large majority of people trading would be liquidated at 35K, which is quite funny given we came from 16K. But that is something that you have to keep in mind. We are far away from support, but also being far away from support is not necessarily a bad thing. That can be a good thing, because that just means the price ran up quite a bit. Trill asks, are you wearing pants? I am actually wearing pants. My fiance's mum is staying at our place, so I am being nice by wearing pants. Do you climb anymore? I'm gonna go on Friday, hopefully, if nothing comes in between me and it. So from time to time, but yeah, right now it's everything is a little bit stressful, and I'm not even trading. So yeah, life is quite busy. I'm in the middle of moving. I'm in the middle of sorting out taxes. They have a lot of questions that are very hard to answer, especially about exchanges that don't exist anymore. There's some bank stuff. Like I said, I don't want to bore anyone with personal stuff, but I've been going through a lot of paperwork, which has not been fun. But is he wearing a hat? I'm actually wearing a headset, so that counts. Anyway, the monthly time frame, 35K, as long as that holds, that's good. I could see that honestly be tested. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. After the ETF, I think a good chance we test 35K. But who knows? At the end of the day, I cannot predict the future, and you shouldn't really just blindly copy trade me, right? So that's that on the weekly time frame. same kind of story as long as 32K holds. So this is a little bit lower, but still a good level. The level comes from this consolidation here that we had, the all-time high consolidation. The low of that range is 32K. So if we go back there, you'd expect it to be strong support. We've moved away from it quite a bit, which can be a good and a bad thing. Like I said, good thing is price is up a lot, so you can you made a bunch of profit basically. Bad thing is if it pulls back, it can go quite far, and that's obviously not fun if you're in position, right? But there's a nice combo, and this is something that I did when I was, if you remember back when we were trading at 16K, where I said, hey, we have a good weekly, we have a good monthly, we have a good monthly, we have a good weekly, we have a good daily. If we hold this level and push up a little bit, right? And then one time frame, basically we had a 4-hour setup at 16K, and I was like, if this plays out bullish, it could lead into a daily setup, and that could lead into a weekly setup, and so on, right? If you remember that, I would show it to you, but it's just everyone should get the point. It's not that complicated. Anyway, basically, you could have the same here where you would have a really nice bullish setup at 32K, because then you're basically trading below the monthly support. You would expect the weekly support to work quite well, bounce that into the monthly support holding, and then you have a really nice bullish setup around 30K. I would like that as a setup, but that's for January, if anything. So that's that. There's support at 32K. There's resistance at 60K. We're right in the middle. So if you want to bet on upside, bet on a Christmas rally. I'm not going to tell you you're stupid, because there's a lot of eyes on crypto. For me, betting on that much upside into news is quite risky, but I think it's not the worst. It's just I prefer being on the non-risky side of things and being ready if this pulls back towards 30K in the new year. I think that would be interesting. Is it always like that with taxes, or just this year because of FTX? It's not only FTX, but basically and I don't want to go too deep into it, but my trading has been too complicated for the tax offices to understand. So they are late in charging me for the previous years, and they have realized that there's quite a bit of money to be made off of me on that front. So now they're kind of coming to me and asking me shit. And they're not asking me only about 2022. They're also asking me about 2021 and 2020 and 2019 and 2018. So I have to answer all of those, and a lot of the exchanges that I used to trade on don't exist anymore. I did save everything, but not everything exists anymore. So basically that's been what I've been doing for quite a while now, basically running through all of those documents. So that's been that's been my life, which is not fun. I can guarantee you dealing with this is not fun. But then again, I had everything run through my accountants, so it's okay. It's not like I'm gonna get fucked. I paid everything. It's just they need to understand everything, and for them to understand everything, I have to give them more. And it's a little bit, yeah. I mean, just for so you understand, right? My trading hasn't gone it's not like I've been trading less later, but 2019 I sent them more than 100,000 pages of data, quite a bit more actually. So yes. So that's been fun. Anyway, enough about me. More about the market. Yeah, the weekly time frame. Honestly, this is not a bad look. It's far from support. It's far from resistance. So you basically toss a coin and pray to God that the ETF news actually carries over more than you'd think. If you're on the bullish side of things, and if you're on the bearish side of things, you pray to God that it's a sell the news event. And if you have strong conviction in either, play it. I honestly don't have strong conviction in either. I don't have any shorts going, but I also don't have any positions because to me it's too late into that news cycle. Move to Dubai, make it easy for yourself. I'd rather die, my friend. I'm not gonna raise my daughter in Dubai, and I'm not gonna avoid taxes either. No offense to anyone that does, but I have been to Dubai for quite a bit, and it's not my place. Anyway, you guys keep derailing me. So the weekly, like the monthly time frame, good. Needs to hold 35k. But until it does, you can if you're just like a chart enjoyer, right? Like you ignore everything else, you're just looking at charts. Then, I mean, that's fine. Then you have a good monthly, a good weekly. It's very far from support. So if your position is kind of like worse than a 32k entry, you're gonna have to take some pain. In my opinion, like it's more likely that you're gonna get some pain, and there's a good chance that we're gonna retest 32k, in my opinion. But it doesn't have to happen, right? And there's something that I try to say very clearly every time I talk about price and whatever, because people always assume just because I'm like, hey, this could happen, it means that it has to happen, but that's not true. The market could just go to 60k, pull back to 48, and then go to 150. There's always a possibility that it just never pulls back, right? But in my opinion, just my personal opinion, I think it's more likely than not that we're gonna retest like the low 30s after the ETF, and then basically decide whether we're bullish or bearish from that point onwards. But yeah, the weekly not in the worst state, and the dailies obviously also not that bad, honestly. It is at resistance, and it's at a resistance that it's battled quite a bit, but it's also like we had one test, we had two tests, and this is the third test, right? So the more often you test the resistance like this, the more likely a breakout becomes. So this is also not that bad short term. And I think short term, you can trade this thing quite aggressively. There is volatility. There is enough kind of to trade this based on like just lower time frames. It's just the high time frames where it gets scary now. But yeah, basically third test of resistance is positive for bulls. You'd expect it to break eventually. Negative for bulls is that the attention is elsewhere, right? The attention is on Solana, on Avax, and on like whatever meme coins, right? I don't know how well Bonk is doing. I haven't checked up on it in a couple of days, but I've like every time I check any of be it Twitter or Discord or Telegram, I see people talk about a new meme coin. So that's the negative side of things. Like we're definitely in froth territory, but like I said last week, froth territory, Jesus Christ, my English. Froth territory can go much, much further than you'd think. So it's quite hard to pick the tops on those. It's just very, like whenever, basically how I look at it, right? So the market moves, whatever, and then it's pretty clear when froth is starting to enter. But basically the market tends to go like violently up, and whenever you have froth, like the bonk and the dog with hat, whatever is around, what usually happens is that the market runs for a while, but it usually goes underneath where that entire froth thing happened. So basically the market sometimes doubles, triples, quadruples, whatever. But the froth part of the move usually is fully retraced. So in my opinion, Bitcoin started frothing like at like 38K ish. So I'm expecting that to be on a pullback. That's kind of like, that's where it started getting crazy, but it could still go high. I mean, I don't expect it to go to 60K, but this could still go higher by quite a bit, right? And then if you get a pullback, that's kind of basically where you start finding support, where the froth started kicking in. So could see like 38K, 37K-ish hold up for Bitcoin for a little bit, or maybe we undercut that by a bit. But in general, like the moment you start getting frothy, you just need to record where it was ish around that level, and then you can be reasonably certain that it can, like, that's a level that can be retested. Don, can you please talk about how you managed your emotions while getting rich? How did you not get winner's tilt and lose your mind? What exactly is winner's tilt? I basically, for me, how I manage my emotions is just that, like, the moment, and this is something that happens to me from time to time too, the moment I start getting too absorbed, and a lot of people would argue the exact opposite, right? But the moment I get too absorbed, then it basically, like, I'm like living the market. And this happened basically, this started happening at 37.5, 38K-ish for me, where I was just basically like living and breathing the market. I usually just take a step back and I start, like, I sell everything, or like sell close to everything, take a break, however long that may be, until my mind is clear again. And it takes a while. I'm still not there, I think. But yeah, it just depends. Like, there's multiple ways to go about it, but I just step off the gas when I see it getting too intense. And in my opinion, this is one of the reasons why why other people outperform me during bull markets, but it's also one of the reasons why I keep my stuff, whereas other people keep having these kind of portfolio swings. My portfolio, like my P&L basically looks like this. But other people's P&L looks like this. And that could be more, you know, like they could outperform me, but I wouldn't want to sit through this. I'm much more happy with something like this. Basically, I just tend to know that I'm an idiot, and then I just trade whenever I have an edge. And I don't always have an edge. I think, like, in this market right now, I don't have an edge, or like not really. Not a clear one anyway. And then I just stay out. Duck, the most genius, rational, and honest guy I saw on crypto Twitter. I'm definitely not the most genius. I tend to do dumb shit, or like I don't tend to do dumb shit, but I'm definitely not like I'm definitely not out there in the genius world. I know my limitations basically, and that's what sets me apart from a lot of other people. Yeah. But there's a lot of much smarter people out there. So that's Bitcoin. Like I said, at resistance, but it can go frothier for longer. And you basically, anything at this point in time, like in my opinion, and this is really just my opinion, right? But anything from this breakout towards wherever this stops is all ETF price action. And like that's news price action. And that's something that you have to be aware of, right? So depending on how the news goes and depending on how the reaction is afterwards, that's where I expect fuckery, right? So I like to take it basically from the obvious point to the, okay, now it's getting ridiculous point. And for me, that was 37, 38. And everything beyond that is starting to get ridiculous, but it can get more ridiculous. Basically, that's my point. It can get much more ridiculous. We've seen in during the COVID times how ridiculous stuff can get. Now coming to ETH's just been ETH's been struggling. Almost none of the gains that Bitcoin have translated, like at least especially like lately, to ETH. ETH is up 1% today. Bitcoin is like 1.4. Bitcoin is up 3.7. Solana Bitcoin is 7% up. ETH BTC is down 2%. Like it's been a drag on the ETH front. One of the reasons why is because it's monthly resistance, right? But I think the more important reason is just that the ETH BTC chart is just abysmal, right? You don't have any bidding from on that side of things. Like the relative strength is just not there, and that's why you don't have any strength in the ETH-USD market. Obviously, it's up, but in comparison to Solana, in comparison to a lot of the other altcoins, it's ridiculous, and even in comparison to Bitcoin, it's ridiculous how poorly ETH is doing. And I'm not surprised. I tweeted at the beginning of this rally that you want to stay away from ETH, that you can trade anything but ETH. I was like, Bitcoin is going to go up, and ETH is for the midwits. ETH is for the people that think they can outperform Bitcoin with ETH by not having so much risk. But instead of having that, it's actually going to be more risk than Bitcoin, and it's actually going to be worse compared to the shitters, because basically the Bitcoin ETF is a Bitcoin narrative, and there's reasonable, and I made this diagram before, right? So in crypto, there's a large chunk of people that is reasonable, and there's a even larger chunk of people that is unreasonable, right? So like the reasonable people and the unreasonable people here, right? The reasonable people, I would argue, they bid Bitcoin, yeah, and they bid ETH. ETH to a little bit of a smaller degree, but given the market cap of ETH is also smaller, that's fine. So that's the reasonable people. The unreasonable people, they fucking bid bonk, they bid the dog with hat, they bid all of these shitters down here, right? So they bid shit, right? Now, when you have a very clear Bitcoin narrative that doesn't translate to ETH, where the reasonable people are like, okay, that's just going to drive Bitcoin prices up, the portion that is buying ETH decreases, because the only people that you can really reach here, this is limited, right? There's a limited amount of reasonable people in crypto. And if they kind of see, if the reasonable people see a clear narrative to Bitcoin, what they do is more people buy Bitcoin, which in turn leads less people to buy ETH. And then ETH underperforms. Now, what happens when Bitcoin goes up is that the unreasonable people are like, Bitcoin up, so I can buy my shitcoin. They don't think about ETH. They don't give a shit. They don't think about Bitcoin. They don't give a shit. They just buy their shitcoins, right? So you basically have the reasonable and unreasonable people buying not your bags. The only people that are buying your bags are the midwits. And the midwits, they don't make money in crypto. So basically, you're shit out of luck. You're stuck in your ETH bags, and everyone else makes money. Bitcoin's been performing really well. The shitcoins have been performing, like especially the shittiest of shitcoins have been performing well. The only ones that have not been getting a bid are the ETH people. Now, that can obviously reverse once the Bitcoin ETF is through. That extra flow from the reasonable people to Bitcoin obviously stops or decreases a little bit. because it's a big kind of news event, and I mean, people have been bought Bitcoin already, and then the reasonable people might make the argument, hey, like we got the Bitcoin ETF, and now we can buy the ETH ETF next. Bitcoin appreciated a shitload, now we can buy ETH. Now the problem is that my going thesis is that the Bitcoin ETF is going to be a sell the news event, and if that is the case, the reasonable people are going to look at ETH and they're going to be like, well, if Bitcoin ETF was a sell the news event, the ETH ETF is going to be a sell the news event too, if we even get one, right? So I think even on that front, you're going to be shit out of luck in ETH. The only way where you can kind of make money on ETH is if the Bitcoin ETF goes through and Bitcoin rockets up, which I think would decrease ETH BTC even more. But then you could jump in. Basically, the only way that you can make ETH make you money, in my opinion, or like one of the few ways, is by completely obliterating ETH BTC to the downside. Because at that point, the way that would happen is basically by having a buy the news event sort of thing with Bitcoin. And then you can have some fun on ETH. But that's the only way that I can see this thing work out. Now, obviously, there are multiple ways that maybe I don't even think of. But in my opinion, it has been pretty clear that ETH has been a bad bet. I've made that clear for the last 6 months. It's the only coin, like legit the only coin, disregarding like complete and utter shit like Litecoin, that I just really don't see a reason to buy. Now, the closer we get to the Bitcoin ETF, the less that statement is accurate. But that was my thinking, and this worked out quite well. I think the people that hedge their altcoin position with ETH shorts are the ones that are laughing their way to the bank. And in my opinion, and this might sound really dumb to a lot of people, but in my opinion, the ETH position in the last few months, and I mean, it's easy to say in hindsight, but something I've been stating for a long time now. In my opinion, ETH was more risky than a lot of the shittier altcoins are, and obviously a million times more risky than Bitcoin. So basically, you took a shitload of risk to own something that really, like, who the fuck is gonna buy it? Now, obviously, like I said, the closer you get to the ETF, the more likely that is to change. But in my opinion, it's gonna be an ETF sell the news event, and that will lead to ETH BTC further weakness. So, yeah. So, not a fan of ETH. I will be if this continues to dump. It's down a shitload from the top. ETH BTC is down 43% from the top. I'm actually curious if Solana BTC is down much. Like Solana, which is like quite very, very far out on the risk curve in comparison, and had the FTX blow up, is down a little bit more than it, but not that much, which I find quite wild. So yeah, it's a little bit of a shitty thing. If I like ETH as a thing, like as a project, doesn't really help that Vitalik is like keeps dumping like a couple millions every other month or so on people. Obviously doesn't really help, but yeah, I like ETH as a thing. I just wanted, like, I think the way it is set up, right, and this is something I like to kind of talk about, is basically it's starting to accelerate to the downside. And if it does this, I think you want to buy it. Donna, are you planning to rotate into ETH after final ETH BTC dump? I could see myself buy some ETH, yeah. But what you have to realize, in my mind, ETH is a shitcoin as much as Solana is, as much as anything else, right? So I like ETH better than a lot of other things. But in my opinion, ETH doesn't have to always be the second. And I'm not saying it is ever going to be the first cryptocurrency, but it doesn't have to be the second. I think I could see in 5 or 10 years Solana be higher than ETH. So for me, this is a risky kind of trade. The ETH trade is a risky one. I do have a little bit more conviction in ETH than other things, but it is a risky trade. ETH is basically unusable. Yeah, it doesn't really help. In general, everything is getting very expensive if you want to actually use it. Look at S&P, it's dumping hard. Yeah. I think in general, like 2024 is going to be worse than people expect it to be, but not as bad as the doomers think it will be. I think 2024 is going to be a year of range, basically. That's my thesis. Spot selling right now, yeah, but spot selling is, I mean, this is the S&P. Like, it's the S&P. Don, didn't you say you didn't like and understood when ETH went from proof of work to proof of stake? Something about deflationary is inflationary. It was mostly memeing. I think the whole deflationary meme on ETH is a great one, but Jesus, that chart, like, look at this. And it's literally the only coin that I see people talk about on Twitter. Just, dude, buy Bonk instead of this. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, I would actually. This is a little bit of an over-exaggeration. But I wouldn't have been shocked to see Litecoin outperform ETH. Now, obviously, it doesn't because Litecoin is shit. But it's not much worse. Like, Litecoin and ETH been pretty much the same level since May 22. Like, the same kind of shit. And if you're as shit as Litecoin, you're having troubles. I get heavy 2024 crab market vibes. Me too. I think I'd be very surprised if we didn't range both crypto and the S&P in 2024. Like yeah. Anyway, that's ETH. There's not that much to say. I think this is gonna keep, like, the sentiment on ETH is starting to turn bad. And that's hilarious because it's down 50% while everything else is up a shitload. And it's only now starting to turn bad. But if there's one thing that I've learned in crypto, in my crypto career, is that once sentiment flips, it can go quite quick. So basically, we're trading here at 0.05 right now. We're actually getting towards the trend line that I've drawn out, which is nice. So if you're a very aggressive ETH bull, I actually think this is not the worst. This is the first time since basically 0.07, 0.076, whatever, that I think it's somewhat reasonable to buy the ratio on ETH. But I think there's a chance that it just does this basically and then takes a long time to come back up. But I think eventually we're going to trade back higher on ETH BTC. But I think the capitulation could come in and could completely and utterly wreck this thing on the ratio. On the USD pair, doesn't have to if Bitcoin goes up. But if Bitcoin goes down, I think ETH BTC is still going to go down. Ranging is good for shitcoins. No, that's what people think, but that's not necessarily true. It is good. It's not good for shitcoins. It's basically good if you're nimble and if you're ready to jump on any narrative. The ranging being good for altcoins comes from older times, but it's not accurate anymore. I mean, short-term ranging, yes. Like if Bitcoin goes like this, 40K, goes sideways from 44 to 40 for a while, that can be good for altcoins, yes. But if you have a 1 year sideways, generally speaking, altcoins bleed out. Reason for that is if the market goes sideways for too long, the natural inflation of the altcoins comes back in. So if there's hype, the inflation of altcoins doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter that Dogecoin inflates like whatever 5 to 10% every year. That doesn't matter. I mean, right now it does because Dogecoin hasn't been caught like catching any bid. But you get what I'm saying, right? Like if a bunch of people are buying Link, they don't really give a fuck. Or like Solana, they don't give a fuck about the inflation. They don't give a fuck about FTX selling Solana, right? Like that, like the couple millions, they can be absorbed. But when the market goes sideways for long enough, that does matter, and that pushes price down. So short-term ranging, yeah, good for altcoins. Long-term ranging, not good for altcoins. ETH downside opens opportunity for Sol. No. Like, no, you want to, like, in general, if altcoins don't do well, like if ETH doesn't do well for a longer period of time, that wouldn't be good for any other altcoin. If anything, it's neutral. It's neutral to bad. Now, Solana has been pumping anyway, even though ETH hasn't been doing so well. But it's not because, ETH is not doing well, so Solana has to do well. It's just because ETH was such a dumb trade that no one took it, and Solana was quite a good trade, so a bunch of people took it. And then the moment basically a coin, and this happens from time to time, right? A coin hits it right and pumps at the right moment. And this is what I always talk about when I say, look for the coins that pump when nothing else does, right? If a coin does that and pumps at the right moment, all eyes are on that coin, and then it has all the opportunity in the world to go up, especially with Solana being so heavily shorted at the start. It had all the opportunity to go up, and then it went up so far that people are just like, I want to buy it. Like I see people talking about flipping their ETH into Solana now, right? Like, why the fuck did you not have that idea 80% lower? And the answer to that question is because they really didn't want to do it. Like they thought the fundamentals of Solana was shit when it was trading lower. So if prices go up, people are like, oh shit, this is the next best thing. It's not. Solana might be great, right? But the reason why people are excited about it is because price went up, not because of the fundamentals, not because of anything else. So you got to be a little bit careful on that front, because people will always get carried away. They like the fundamentals if price goes up, and they hate the fundamentals if price goes down. So that is a little bit of a different story. So yeah, that's that. Like I said, ETH is approaching my trend line. So if you want to be an aggressive ETH bull that doesn't have any exposure and wants to have some for sure, I think this is not the worst level. You would basically bet on this trend holding. In my opinion, it's going to fail. But that's the first kind of good support level that we're hitting. So I'm not hating on anyone that buys this level. I want to see this capitulate, basically. But maybe we don't ever get it. I'm not the biggest ETH bull, so if I don't buy the absolute peak or bottom, I don't really give a fuck. But if you do, this is a decent level. And if this level fails, I think the next best one is 0.04. And honestly, on the ETH front, I wouldn't be surprised by something like this. Obviously, the scale doesn't have to be accurate. 2028 is a little bit late for this, but I would expect price to go down, range a bunch, and then go up. I think 2024 is not going to be the best for ETH still. I think afterwards it will be. At least Solana is usable, yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's all basically a trade-off between decentralization and usability, and you kind of have to figure out how much of decentralization you want to have and how usable you want to have it. And if you're on the usable side of things, you get more and more centralized, which kind of defeats the purpose. So it's this kind of nice game where you have on one side, is it actually usable, and on the other side, like, you have the decentralization aspect, and then you have the bunch, all the L1s basically on this scale somewhere. Like, this is the decentralization, this is how it's usable, and then I would say ETH is further here, and Solana is further here, and then there's some that are even more centralized, and there's some that are more decentralized than ETH, and you just pick your poison, basically. In my opinion, my personal opinion, if you're like, oh, but at least I can use this, and it's because it's so centralized, I think it kind of defeats the purpose of crypto as a whole. Might as well just build a system like this in a traditional finance world, and then go from there. Hey Dawn, late to the stream. How quickly do you think we will sell off the news, assuming approval? Same day, same week? Same week, I think. Not necessarily same day, but I could be completely wrong. But yeah, so Sol, I promised, so I'm gonna deliver. This has been excellent on the whatever the fuck. What time frame was this? I don't know where this comes from, but it's an excellent support. I mean, it ended up being an excellent support. Let me check. It's a daily support. Fair enough. Yeah, okay. Well, that daily support was great in hindsight. Anyway, Solana broke down. This is basically the FTX candle to the downside. Ripped back up, and the moment it closed above monthly support at 30, it started rallying like crazy. If you want to trade this on a high time frame basis, right? And this is why, like, when you remember when I said like 80 to 100, this is the resistance I was talking about, and this is the resistance I've been talking about on Solana in general. I think this is as good as it's gonna get, like 90 to 120-ish. It's a nice kind of target area. I think that's very much pushing it. Anything beyond that point, that seems quite risky to me. I wouldn't want to bet on anything above 120. And then support-wise, anything between 30 and 40. So I think if I had to make a bet, I would bet on something like this, and then you can still make your choices later down the line. I think there's a good chance you're gonna get to buy this at 30, 40, but there's also a chance it never comes back and it just keeps on rallying, whatever. But in crypto, generally speaking, stuff comes back. So I think, like, if you're bullish on Solana, you can be until 100, 110, 120, depending on how bullish you are. And if you want to buy this on a macro, like not like a daily chart, but on a macro time basis, I think anything between 30 and 40 would be an interesting choice. So basically, you can flip this box, turn it here, and that's the monthly support, and that's the monthly resistance, and there you go. And then on the weekly time frame, low, like, if you think there's more to this rally and we get like a washout, I mean, 60 is the support. It's not the best, but it's a support. So if you get the wick into 60, maybe that'll be interesting. But same story here, 30, 40 is interesting. And then higher, obviously, 100, like somewhere here, 115, whatever. That's like, and the reason, like, why I'm a little bit like, I don't want to necessarily talk about these is because this is the high time frame stuff, and I don't necessarily care about the low time frame stuff, right? We talked about AVAX last stream, and I was like, yeah, you can trade this on the low time frames in the 4 hour, and this is exactly basically how it played out. I was like, as long as it can hold this trend line here, you're probably going to get a breakout. The breakout happened. It retraced, and then you got bought back up, and it walked back up, right? So low time frame, there's stuff that you can trade. Like this, for example, like it was a pretty nice, easy kind of like breakout trade on the 4 hour time frame that you would have to have sold into. Otherwise, you got completely fucked if you took any sort of leverage, right? And those are like, there's a lot of setups here that you can trade on the low time frames. The high time frames, like especially this, quite clean, you know, like that's just like a breakout. Probably going to play out the same as AVAX did, honestly, where you have to sell into the breakout. It comes back down. Maybe it comes back up. Maybe there's another one. Could see that play out similar. Doesn't have to though. And I'm not an expert in trading these low time frame things. But the reason why I'm kind of like, yeah, it's a little bit shitty because the high time frame levels are very far far away and you're in the middle of nowhere, and then you can just trade the low time frames. And I really don't wanna be the guy that trades, like, talks about the 4 hour, 1 hour, whatever. I'm pretty sure if I wanted to, I could influence the price to, like, if you have a setup here, like the Avax one, if I really wanted to, if I tweeted down here that there's like this setup and that I think it's gonna break out, I could make it break out even if it would have dumped otherwise, just based on the size of my Twitter profile and the reach that I got. So that's why I stay away from the low time frames, just because I think it's unethical. If anything, I would trade it myself, but not talk about it. So something that you're always gonna see me do is like go on the high time frames, because there's nothing that I'm influencing here on the monthly and the weekly, and the daily is quite hard as well. But the low time frames you can influence, and I think you just shouldn't. So that's that. AVAX, resistance support wise, I think you have, let's go to something reasonable. Yeah, it's quite tough. It's quite tough to be bullish on this thing at this point. I think if you're starting to be bullish on AVAX now, you're very late to the party. I could, if I would want to stretch it, I could see it run into 60. But I think that's very much pushing it. And then support wise, like where it starts getting interesting again is like 28 to 20 on that front. But I think like you could see, if it gets a lot more frothy, you could see like 60, 70-ish, but anything beyond this range here that we used to have, I think is very much stretching it. And then basically supports, high time frame supports, if you actually really like it, somewhere, like if you really like AVAX for whatever reason, could see it kind of be coming back towards like 30, like in here. And if that doesn't hold, if it pulls, basically if it runs towards 60, 70, then this support is a really good one. If it fails here and comes down, I think basically this support's a really good one. So it basically depends. Like if you want to be buying supports, you might have to risk it going up here and then coming back, or like doing something like this and then having it here. And if you just don't give a fuck and you're just a market buying Chad, like I said, if you just market buy it here and hope that it goes to 70, I think it's possible, but quite unreasonable in my eyes. Do we know why the entire market just dumped at once? Bitcoin plus stocks, thanks, Doug. The reason is because the S&P dumped, and then that just takes out crypto as well. I don't know why the S&P dumped, but I think, it's basically back at all-time highs. I think it doesn't really need a reason to dump a little bit. You can barely see this on the chart. Like, you're like, holy shit, it dumped so much. It retraced 2 days after having had like 2 months of full-blown upside. Are you going back in Bitcoin at 32K? Meaning, do you have limit buy orders at 32K? No, I don't. But if it comes back to 32K, like in February, March, or April next year, I might take a nibble. But right now, I have other things that I'm worried about in real life. I have a daughter that is younger than 1. I have, like I said, the whole tax thing moving. I have a new business that I'm setting up, a real life business, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot. So that's I'm not trading for quite a while. And if that makes you not want to listen to me, I totally understand. I usually don't listen to people that don't trade. So take my advice. I'm not giving advice, but take my opinion with a grain of salt, because I'm really not trading. When we get to 32K and bounce, what percentage do you think the bounce will continue into full-blown bull? I think at that point it's a 50-50. Either it goes up or it goes down. No, but I think it's 50-50-ish. It depends on the S&P at that point. Right now, we're a little bit decoupled because we have the whole ETF flows. At that point, I think it depends on how the traditional markets do. And if they don't do so well, I don't see how we would hold. If they do well, I'd be surprised if it doesn't hold. Hey, Doug, what do you think about BNB? I hate it. Like, I could not see myself buy this. Like, no chance in hell. And the reason is quite simple. It's basically because Binance is in hot water and they're being investigated quite thoroughly, obviously. And the best way, we just it's an exchange coin, right? And the exchange is being closely watched, and it's quite illegal to run like a security thing. So basically, Binance is incentivized not to do much with BNB, in my opinion, anyway. So I stay away. I generally stay away from exchange coins. It's not my preferred area of trading. Someone keeps asking about Phil. What do you think about Arthur Hayes saying his number one pick is Philcoin? Literally everything Arthur Hayes touches goes to zero. So, like, everything he shills nowadays goes to fucking zero. He's the top indicator of the top indicators. So that I would take with a grain of salt. I like him as an intellectual. I like what he writes, and I like the way he voices things. I don't necessarily like his business practices, but just from reading his thoughts, I like it. But I kind of have to be objective, and he just tends to shill utter garbage at Pico tops. And yeah, TA-wise, I don't think this is super interesting in comparison to a lot of other things. Like, if your coin doesn't outperform ETH, it's just not that interesting. Like, this is what you need to trade. These coins. I mean, yeah, that I could have guessed. I mean, Bonk, I think you should not be buying Bonk, honestly, but this is how they have to look. If they look worse than ETH or similar, like, for example, Litecoin, you're shit out of luck, my dude. I respect Don's takes a lot, but he's out of his mind for thinking the sentiment on ETH has been positive till recently. It's absolutely rock bottom in the gutter sentiment. It has been for 2 months. I disagree. It depends on who you're asking, basically. But yeah, I think in general you should be sticking with stuff that is outperforming ETH. That's like if you chart, like, I think actually charting against ETH is quite nice right now, because if it's outperforming ETH, you know it's being bid. If it's not outperforming ETH, you don't want to touch it. And the reason why I say that the sentiment has been quite good is just because basically everyone's been looking for ETH bottom. It's obviously people have not been like, holy shit, I'm euphoric, ETH is going up. But it's a coin that has been in a downtrend, and the question still is, where do I buy this thing? And the question is not, or like the sentiment is not, fuck, I should have sold this thing. And there's a big difference there. Now, obviously, people are not too excited about ETH not having performed well, but people have been looking for the bottom for months now, and that is very, very different. Don, sir, your list looks like it's never been updated since 2020. Yeah, it probably hasn't. I have another one that is more up to date, but I generally type it in nowadays. But I'm so boomer, like I don't trade Bonk, I don't trade these kind of things. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I'm a boomer. I trade Bitcoin, I trade ETH. I do trade Solana. I traded Solana a bunch. But that's it. Like a lot of these things, like Lido, for example, that's too new of a coin for me. I'm just like, fuck it. And that's already old guard for a lot of you guys, and that's too new for me. But yeah, that's that. I think that's enough on the stream front. I wanna get done. I think we're back. Like this is gonna get more and more important again. Now that the ETF is basically like we're getting there, we're getting done. I think we're gonna be trading the S&P again. So prepare for that. If you think the S&P goes to all-time high and beyond, it is already there basically. But if you think it's breaking out, I think you can be bullish Bitcoin even beyond the, like after the ETF dump that I'm expecting. Doesn't have to happen, but could. Then afterwards, like after like a month or two after the Bitcoin ETF, you just want to look at the S&P again. So hope that helps. I'm gonna be around on Friday for a show with Cred, I think, hopefully. And then I'm gonna be on vacation throughout Christmas, but I'll be around. You'll get to see me from time to time, or talk to me anyway, whatever. Write to me, whatever you wanna. And then we'll see how it goes. Don't get caught in any like illiquid time periods. Christmas usually quite illiquid in comparison to how it usually is. And don't do anything dumb in like if we get an ETF approval, or I mean if we get an ETF denial, you know what to do. But if you get an approval, don't put too much leverage on all that kind of shit. And yeah, have a nice Christmas, because I'm not gonna be live till after Christmas. So yeah, it's been fun spending some time with you guys. Thanks for the questions and all the comments and everything. Always helpful. Good to kind of have someone to talk to. Otherwise, it's just me rambling, and I can ramble and ramble. So yeah, appreciate you guys coming by. Big shout out also to Woo for sponsoring the show. They have events going into Christmas, trading competitions, all that kind of stuff. You should go check them out. Link to them is in the description. And yeah, thanks for coming by. Have a nice time. Have a good Christmas. Take some time off and spend it with your family if you can. I think it's always worth it. You don't know how many Christmases you have. It's always, our time is limited and can end quite quickly. It's quite dark note to end, but I think it's important. So spend some time with your family, get away from the charts, try to not think about it too much, and just enjoy your time. So yeah, see ya guys, much love, bye bye.